It's a wonderful time to be a Cobra Kai aficionado, with the first part of the final season having dropped on Netflix. The beloved continuation of the Karate Kid franchise, which started in 2018, is now in its final arc, and things have never been more intense. Fans of the show are already flooding social media with their theories and predictions about the end of the series, and there's also talk of another Karate Kid movie coming up. While the showrunners have maintained that the three-part finale season was deliberately implemented to heighten the suspense of the popular show's ending, it seems like a wait too long for fans who can no longer sit still to see what happens to their beloved characters. The first part of Season 6 started with a relatively peaceful valley situation and the youngsters discussing their plans after high school. However, this piece turned out to be very volatile, as a personal tragedy soon struck one of Miyagi-Do's students, which led to the cliffhanger in the 5th episode. A lot of other questions also came to the forefront, including the past of Mr. Miyagi, the overarching protagonist of the Karate Kid movies and the show. While Johnny Lawrence is battling his own demons, Daniel LaRusso is struggling to find balance in his life. The youngsters are anxious about the Sakai Taai tournament and their futures, and everything seems to hang on a very delicate balance. Of course, this highlights the cinematic brilliance of the show and its ability to keep fans on the edge. What will happen in Part 2 of Season 6? Will fans finally get a glimpse into the real life of Mr. Miyagi? How is Tory going to redeem herself? Will Miyagi-Do win the Sakai Taai? Or are they overestimating themselves? In this video, we've tried to answer a few of these, so let's get started. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Season 6 Part 1 Recap. The first episode of Season 6 is titled Peacetime in the Valley, and for the most part, it does show that everything is calm for a change. Johnny prepares to welcome a baby and gets a job at Daniel's business. The students start considering how their lives will be after finishing high school. Daniel makes a surprising discovery about his mentor, Mr. Miyagi, and gets thrown off course with the knowledge. However, as mentioned, this piece does not last for long. Johnny and Daniel have joined their dojos and are preparing their students for the Sakai Taai tournament, along with Chosen. Now, historically, Johnny and Daniel have rarely gotten along with each other given their temperaments and outlooks on fighting. Soon enough, the senseis clash with each other, first over the name of the dojo, and then over more pressing issues, such as their students' outlooks on karate. In the meanwhile, John Creese is back, but this time in South Korea, where he reunites with Kim Dae-un and Kim Sun-young. He still has plans of taking Cobra Kai to the world stage, and after a trying test, he makes it to Kim Sun-young's good books and is allowed to train the students. He uses his usual teaching methods to encourage violence and hatred among them, and in particular is able to train Kwan to be a near-perfect model of his mental philosophy. When he comes to the United States, he meets Tory and gives her a very cryptic message. She will always belong at Cobra Kai, even though Tory is now a student at Miyagi-Do. With the date of the Sakai Taai coming up, it's up to Miyagi-Do to choose a 6-member team with a male and a female captain to be eligible for the tournament. They start training for the same, and Johnny focuses on his own methods, which are at total crossroads with Daniel's methods. In order to make it to the competing team, Devon ends up sabotaging her way, and in a very tragic turn of events, Tory's mother loses her battle with her illness. While Tory was aware of her mother's ill health, and it's been looming over her mind, this tips her off the edge and she storms off in the middle of the fight between her and Sam, which would have chosen the female captain for the Sakai Taai. No one knows where she goes, and Hawk takes her place in the team, which keeps preparing for the tournament. In the meantime, Johnny and Daniel constantly clash on their philosophies, and Johnny announces that after the Sakai Taai, they will be done for good. When the team arrives in Barcelona, Spain for the tournament, they are in for the shock of their lives. As they line up, they notice Creese and his students lining up opposite to them, in black Cobra Kai attire. Even though he has been defeated earlier in the series, it looks like he will not go down so easily. And the even more devastating revelation comes when Tory walks up behind him, dressed in black. Her moving back to Cobra Kai comes as a shock to everyone at Miyagi-Do, and even she feels slightly conflicted facing her friends and boyfriend. But she's made her decision, and it might be too late to go back. Part 2 Release Date and Cast. The first 5 episodes, which form part 1 of the final season, have been out on Netflix since July 18th. The next few episodes, which will make up part 2, will be released on November 15th, 2024. Part 3, which is being dubbed by Netflix as the finale event, will be out in 2025 with no set date as yet. While it hasn't yet been confirmed how many episodes will be in parts 2 and 3 respectively, we know that there are 15 episodes in total for season 6, so it may be divided into 5 episodes each of 3 parts. However, the finale episode certainly suggests that there would be one mega finale, which could take place over multiple episodes or a single episode. However, none of this has been confirmed yet, and showrunners have not dropped a lot of hints about the episode breakdown. William Zabka, who plays Johnny Lawrence, has mentioned that the finale can be compared to a film trilogy. The main cast of parts 2 and 3 of season 6 are Ralph Macchio as Daniel LaRusso, William Zabka as Johnny Lawrence, Martin Kove as John Creese, Xolo Maridueña as Miguel Diaz, Mary Mouser as Samantha LaRusso, Tanner Buchanan as Robbie Keane, Peyton List as Tory Nichols, Jacob Bertrand as Hawk, Yuji Okamoto as Chosen, and Una O'Brien as Devon. There's no particular news about the supporting cast as of now, but fans have been theorizing that someone will be brought in to portray a younger Mr. Miyagi during the arc that explains the Japanese man's backstory. Predictions from Part 2. After the cliffhanger that Part 1 ended on, a lot of questions have been raised, which will probably all be answered in Part 2 itself, since Part 3 might focus more on the Sakai Taai and the ultimate fate of the Miyagi-Do students. Naturally, the stakes are very high, and fans expect nothing but the best from the showrunners, especially now that they've made the situation much more intense and complicated than anyone could have imagined. Ultimately, only they know what is being cooked, but we've tried to take a shot at solving some of the burning questions and predicting what will possibly be explained in Part 2 of Season 6. Tory's betrayal will be explained. Cobra Kai doesn't do a very good job of maintaining the timeline, since Tory's mother dies in a shockingly short time, which obviously starts haunting Tory. She becomes withdrawn and depressed, and holds on to a lot of anger and unresolved trauma. This initially starts with her not returning anyone's calls and isolating herself, letting her negative feelings inside her stew even more. Finally, when she comes to fight Sam for the position of female captain, Amanda gets to hear from the hospital about her mother's passing. The LaRussos do not want her to fight with that kind of fragile mental state where anger and grief are dominant, but Johnny wants her to utilize those emotions to achieve victory. As the adults start to bicker among themselves, Tory can no longer hold on to maintain her act of sanity, and she storms off. There's a continuity break between her leaving Miyagi-Do and going over to Creese's side, and fans don't know what happened in between. Did Robbie not try to get in touch with her? Or for that matter, did none of her friends from Miyagi-Do try to contact her? It's possible that they were trying to give her space to grieve over her mother's death, but to Tory, this could have come across as them isolating her and leaving her to deal with herself. In such a volatile state of mind, it is possible that she realized Creese was right, and Cobra Kai is where she will always belong. Her switching teams is not revealed until the very end of Part 1, which heightens her betrayal of Miyagi-Do, but can it really be called a betrayal? Tory is still a child, who now has no one in the world to call her own. All she has is her anger and grief and her karate, and instead of letting those emotions go, it's possible that she's holding on to them to save herself the feeling of having lost everything. Cobra Kai and Creese have weaponized her emotions quite well in the earlier seasons, and she just feels at home with them, where she doesn't have to fight against her feelings, but can use them to fight others. As such, most of the students on Creese's team have anger issues, which he exploits to make them fight in an even deadlier manner. It's also possible that Tory left Miyagi-Do because her primary rival in the dojo was Samantha LaRusso, Daniel, and Amanda's daughter. She may have thought that they were biased towards their child, and the fact that Sam still had her parents in her life could have been a tipping point for Tory, who had no one and nothing. Just when the two were beginning to improve their relationship, Tory left, and this can possibly indicate a showdown between her and Sam in the Sakai Taai, and who knows how Tory will react then. She's never been one to shy away from using excessive force, and this puts Sam in a tough spot because a lot of fans believe that while she is a good fighter, she is not not at Tory's level. Finally, Robbie will have to deal with the consequences of his girlfriend leaving his side at the tournament. Will he be able to hold her hand through her grief and talk sense to her? Or will he be forced to fight her? It's a classic duty versus desire. Part 2 will hopefully shed more light on the matter and explain exactly why Tory decided to switch teams. The question is, will everyone at Miyagi-Do be able to forgive her? Devon's wrongdoing will possibly be punished. During the selection of the 6 members who would go to the Sakai Taai, Devon manages to snatch a spot. However, she does not do it honorably. It's revealed that she had spiked Kenny's water with laxatives so that he would have to opt out of the race and she would take his spot. Obviously, Devon was insecure about her skills and desperate to get into the final lineup, which is why she did this. Even though Kenny seems to have an idea about it, he doesn't tell anyone yet. However, no crime goes unpunished. Devon will have to come to face what she has done, and this might happen at the Sakai Taai itself when she realizes that she cannot always cheat her way into things. She will be faced with lapses in her skills, and it's only a matter of time before her senseis get to know about how she made it to the final lineup. Johnny in particular is very fond of Devon and considers her like his own daughter, and when he comes to know of her mistake, he's probably going to take it the hardest. Devon is ferocious and a good fighter, but she lacks the inherent spirit of Miyagi-Do. This can again lead to a disagreement between Daniel and Johnny, as the former might believe that Johnny favors Devon because she exhibits the toxicity that Johnny himself embodies at times. Johnny also has to deal with one of his most favored students cheating her way into the competition. For Devon, the consequences may be far more severe, since she has some idea about her limitations, which is exactly why she felt the need to cheat. It will be interesting to see how she redeems herself. Mr. Miyagi's true past will come out. In Season 6, Part 1, Daniel, Amanda, and Chosen find a box that can possibly be a gateway to Mr. Miyagi's past, which seems a little conflicted as of now. From what we know of Mr. Miyagi, he has mostly been a kind, well-intentioned man, but never shied away from a fight. The box contained information that a person named Keisuke Miyagi was involved in a violent assault and crime. Initially, Daniel refuses to believe that the person is his mentor, Mr. Miyagi, but when they choose to explore the address mentioned in the passport found in the box, they find out that Mr. Miyagi was the silent partner of a boxing gym and did flee America at some point. It's also revealed that Mr. Miyagi may have fought in the Sakai Taai. Of course, Daniel prepares to dig into the past to find out what Mr. Miyagi has been hiding from everyone. It may rock the very foundation of the belief that Daniel abides by because he sees Mr. Miyagi as a saint, an infallible figure who can do no wrong. But if Part 2 of Season 6 ends up showing that the man was a felon, then Daniel will have a lot of soul-searching to do. It's quite possible that Mr. Miyagi was involved in shady stuff, and this can paint a tale of atonement for him. And Daniel may come to the realization that his mentor and father figure was more like Johnny than him. He'd built his whole life based on the belief that Mr. Miyagi was a holy, pious man. And so, if the truth is somewhat ugly, it may make Daniel go into a downward spiral and ultimately close down Miyagi-Do. Either way, no one could have seen this one coming. It's a very clever idea on the showrunner's part because this will not only heighten the suspense in the final episodes, but will also prove that men are not all black and white. John Creese and Kim Dae-eun will have to prepare for a final showdown. In South Korea, Creese and Dae-eun were training their students to compete in the Sakai Taai, and as expected, their methods were brutal and ruthless compared to Miyagi-Do's. Creese knows how to spot vulnerability in his students and exploit their hate and anger to ultimately forward his cause. He had never forgotten about his defeat at the hands of Mr. Miyagi, which is why he's still trying to reignite Cobra Kai and defeat everything Mr. Miyagi stood for. And for a man as desperate as him, who can even fake his death to get out of prison, nothing is too excessive. He already has Quan on his side, a ruthless fighter who might just be able to take out both Robbie and Miguel. And now, Tory has also gone over to Cobra Kai, and Creese is obviously satisfied with this. Tory has a lot of anger in her, and Creese will certainly find a way to use that to make her into a lethal weapon, which will now not only aim to defeat, but maybe also kill. He has eyes on the prize, which is defeating Miyagi-Do and crushing the spirit of Mr. Miyagi. While fans don't know if Terry Silver might make a reappearance in the final 2 parts, it is expected that he will show up in some capacity or another, and whether he joins forces with Creese will be interesting to witness. Some fans also theorize that the final season might become a redemption arc for Creese. It's possible that in the Sakai Taai, he comes to realize that hate, anger, and resentment cannot fully embody martial arts. He's the very soul of Cobra Kai, so if someone were to shut it down for good, it would have to be him. He could lock horns with Terry Silver in an epic showdown as part of his redemption arc, and finally give in to the teachings of Mr. Miyagi. However, this is quite a stretch, because if Creese was to redeem himself, he would probably not have held on to the resentment for more than 2 decades. Ultimately, he's the main antagonist of the show, so he'll certainly get his dues, but it's hard to predict how that would come about. What will happen to Johnny and Daniel? Johnny and Daniel have always been rivals, right from their teen years. Their ideologies conflict with each other, and they have very different outlooks on life and personalities. They're like oil and water, they don't really mix. Despite their best efforts to join their dojos and be more harmonious with each other, they've always had their disagreements and fights. Johnny's made it clear that after winning the Sakai Taai, he and Daniel would be done for good, and fans believe him because their alliance is as fragile as it is. Johnny's expecting a child with Carmen and has been trying to be a more responsible person, while Daniel is fighting his instincts because he's discovered something very disturbing about his mentor and father figure. They're both going through trying times, and in this situation, karate is the only thing that appears to hold them together. They've devoted most of their lives so far to karate, so it's hard to believe that they might just give it all up. As the central figures of the show, everything kind of hinges on them. Their actions and decisions throughout the rest of the season will decide not just their individual fates, but also the futures of the children under their care. Some fans want them to reunite for good, while others want them to go their different ways because that is what they've always been, rivals. Who will win the Sakai Taai? Right now, the Sakai Taai is the biggest question mark in the show. It's going to be brutal because this is no longer the All-Valley tournament, but a world tournament, and Cobra Kai is not the only threat to Miyagi-Do here. There are teams from all over the world with their unique styles, and Miyagi-Do has to deal with all of that along with their personal demons. It's assumed that the final for the boys would come down to Quan, Robbie, and Miguel, because, well, they have the protagonist halo. It's highly unlikely that no other team in the world will be as good as them, but it is a show after all, so we have to assume one of these 3 will win. Similarly, the girls' final will boil down to Tory for sure, and maybe Sam. Tory is as good a contender as any, and now with her newfound tutelage by Creese, she's more likely to have honed her skills to a deadly degree. Fans believe that she will be fighting Sam at some point in the tournament, and maybe even defeating her, as she would have in the fight for the captain if she hadn't left in between. As for the group tournament, no one can predict who will win. It would have been a happy ending for Miyagi-Do to have won all 3, but that's probably too far-fetched. However, a lot of fans believe that Tory will eventually return to Miyagi-Do for good once she has served her purpose at Cobra Kai.
Here we come, yo, tell you what to do. Stop, man, and turn up this tune.
Marvelous verdict. The clock is ticking, but not fast enough because there are too many questions and we all want answers. Cobra Kai had built up a wonderful story over the past few years, with a lot of intrigue, but they've certainly outdone themselves with the final season. Everyone's fate hangs in the balance, relationships are strained, and the future is very, very uncertain. Moreover, it might just turn out that Daniel and his relationship with Mr. Miyagi, which is one of the central themes of the show, might just fall apart after Daniel comes to know about his mentor's past. Will there even be a Miyagi-Do when this happens? Will Daniel be able to find the balance in his life he's been looking for so desperately? And can he be there for his students when they need him the most? Let's just hope that parts 2 and 3 end on a satisfying note for all the characters, except Creese. But then again, Cobra Kai never dies, so who knows what will happen. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.